Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Okay, my name is Alyssa Calderhead. I'm the PTAC co-chair. It is 4:02 on Wednesday, April 9th here, so I am calling the first meeting of the Public Transit Advisory Committee to order. All right, so let's go ahead and first begin with introductions of all of the committee members. I ask that you please say your name, which city, town, or board appointed you. So we're going to start with the PTAC members in the room, then our PTAC members who joined us virtually, and then finally we'll have staff introductions finish us off. So let's start with the members in the room on the right side here and roll around.
Hey everybody, I'm Juan Contreras-Juarez. Appointed by MTC. I live in Charlotte in the Elizabeth neighborhood area, so I commute using the 27.
Thank you. Jonathan Wells, I have been appointed by the CMS Board of Education.
Nick Gallo, appointed by the town of Pineville.
I'm Veteran Bird, representing the town of Matthews, 64X.
Kevin Walsh, appointed by the town of Huntersville, 63X rider.
Barry Green Jr., appointed by Mecklenburg County Commissioners, and I take the 23.
Alyssa Calderhead, PTAC co-chair, mayoral appointee.
Abdulio Odin, co-chair, appointed by Mecklenburg County.
Rob Hillman, appointed by the City of Charlotte. Rob Hillman, appointed by the City of Charlotte.
John Cock, Town of Davidson.
Tanya Jameson, appointed by the City of Charlotte.
Marlon Stover, City of Charlotte.
And our members joining us virtually.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Hansard. I'm representing Cornelius, North Carolina.
Mute.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great.
Okay, and our.
Oh, you couldn't hear me earlier. Yeah, I was speaking again. Yeah. I'm Anthony Hansard. I'm representing Cornelius, North Carolina.
Excellent. And let's go ahead and have our CAT staff in the room introduce themselves.
I'm Brett Balbeck. I'm the communications manager for CAPS.
Good afternoon, Jason Lawrence, Chief Planning Officer with CATS.
Hi, Kelly Goforth, Chief Development Officer.
Elizabeth Pursuti, Chief Administrative Officer.
And I'm Brent Cagle, Interim CEO, CATS.
And I'm Stuart Pratt, the City Attorney's Office.
Emily Fundy with CAPS.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm your social media manager.
Okay, great. On to our next order of business. We have some new members I'd like to welcome. We've got a couple of PTAC members, our new co-chair, Abdulio Odin.
Yes.
If you would like to take a moment and tell us about yourself or your experience,
Okay.
please do.
I can do that. Okay, as I said, my name is Abdulio Odin. I represent Mecklenburg County. I have been in transportation for about 41 years in all different facets: rail, heavy rail, light rail, bus, everything that rolls. I've probably been a part of it. I've been a resident of Charlotte, Mecklenburg area for almost a year now, transplanted down from Maryland. But I'm more than happy to be here and help you guys grow in Mecklenburg County.
Great. And Juan Contreras-Juarez.
Yeah, so hey everybody, I'm Juan again. I previously actually served on TSAC but I'm currently in Charlotte, been in Charlotte for about 10 years now. I commute by various means trying to avoid the car. So the bus and rail is my main option. On a really nice day, I'll commute by biking as well. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Our next section, we'll have time to look at public comment here. I'll hand that over to Emily Coonsey to lead.
We have two speakers. I'm not sure if Mayhem Mokala was able to join us. He was signed up from Philadelphia. The next speaker is Colin Forrest. Want to go to the podium? We'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Colette Forrest, and I am with the Charlotte Black Voter Project. And I have been in Charlotte almost 30 years now. And in 2023, myself, Attorney Ferguson, many elected officials, we met over at Ferguson Stein and Chambers, and we were very concerned with the voting trends of Black voters registered here in Mecklenburg County. And we're a nonpartisan entity. And of course, we were dismally disappointed and devastated with last year's election results as far as the turnout, because we're nonpartisan. And so what we decided to do, as opposed to candidates forums and knocking on doors and canvassing, we decided for 2025, we would have events around issues that Black voters in Mecklenburg County and the overall constituency in Mecklenburg County are interested in. And as we all know, transportation is vital for a vibrant city. Saying that, as such, we are hosting, we are hosting on May the 1st, being a Thursday, we're hosting a transit town hall. And it is nonpartisan, as you will see from the persons that are participating. We have Congresswoman Alma Adams that will be participating. We will have present City Council person Tariq Bakari that is participating. And he, as you all know, this body, he is newly appointee with the Trump administration, and he'll be the #2 guy. And we also have our mayor of the city, Vi Lyles. We have the Board of County Commissioner Chair, Mark Jarrell, Bobby Drakeford, a developer that is intimately involved in the Beatties Ford corridor. So wanted to extend a warm invitation to everyone in this room. I am here to ask you, as we move forward to possibly having it on the ballot, that we ensure that minority businesses are involved in the contracting to ensure, be it small minority businesses, Hispanic, Asian, African American, Black, that they're at the table. We also want to make certain that I live in Wesley Heights, and Wesley Heights, for the last 30 years that I've lived there, has been deeply affected by gentrification. So we want to ensure that when we build these beautiful transit plans on busy corridors like Beatties Ford, Moorhead, that we ensure that we're sensitive to the pre-existing population that live there. So these are just some of our concerns, and we're bringing this forth. We are neutral. We are not for the transit. We are not against it. We are in a fact-finding mode, trying to ensure that it benefits the registered Black voters and the voters that will live in the corridors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forrest.
There are no more public speakers.
Okay. Okay, because there are no more public speakers, we'll move on to MTC updates from the March 26th Metropolitan Transit Commission meeting. Interim CEO report by Brent Cagle was reviewed. The summary of monthly statistics for February 2025 was provided, which included safety, ridership trends, sales tax, and communication reports. In addition, under informational items, we had a micro transit update from Ms. Elizabeth Presetti, Chief Administrative Officer and Deputy Director, presented an update on the implementation plan of the microtransit service in the North Mecklenburg County towns. So as y'all may be aware of, Micro is an on-demand shared ride service that provides point-to-point trips and operates within a designated zone using a smaller transit vehicle. So microtransit began on Monday, February 24th, 2025. And at this time, we have 1,222 rides, as well as 1,063 trips have been provided. Ms. Presetti also reviewed the microtransit performance indicators, our ridership trends, and demonstrated top destinations to date. I believe she said that ongoing community engagement activities are continuing to bring overall awareness to this new service. Overall, it's looking fairly successful. In addition, we saw a transit system plan update by Ms. Kelly Goforth, Chief Development Officer, presented information on the transit system plan, or the TSP update, and will receive a similar presentation later today. As far as action items concerned, in regards to the Transportation Demand Management Grant application, the MTC adopted a resolution to allow CATS to apply for Transportation Demand Management Program funding from the NCDOT for the year 2026, as well as a call for projects. So if awarded, this funding will provide CATS the resources to implement marketing campaigns, as well as develop transit education programs with the goal of increasing ridership. So the NCDOT TDM program requires a 50% local match, and CATS proposes to submit a funding request of $146,068. And lastly, the MTC unanimously appointed Juan Contreras Juarez, a fixed route bus rider, for the 2-year term to represent CATS fixed route bus riders. Lastly, we saw an MTC budget presentation by Chad Howell, Chief Financial Officer. He led this workshop with a presentation of the 2026 operating and capital budget, and we will receive a similar presentation today from Brent Cagle, interim CEO, while Chad is out of the office. Are there any questions about the MTC updates?
Question for Elizabeth or whoever knows. Are there other entities in Charlotte that are applying for the NCDOT TDM funding, or like Centralina or Sustain Charlotte, or are you all doing that jointly?
I'm pretty sure Centralina is applying, but I'm not sure about the others. You know, Jason?
Not offhand. I mean, they have in the past. I don't know if they received it. Centralina likely. I don't know. I'm not sure about Sustain, but it is open to them if they wanted to.
It's not a joint application.
No, no.
Okay, any other questions? With that, we'll move on to our 2 agenda items. First, we'll start with Brent Cagle providing a presentation on the CATS capital and operating budget.
Yes, good afternoon. As already stated, I'm Brent Cagle, interim CEO. I am standing in for Mr. Howell today. He regretfully could not be here today. He is with the city's CFO, Teresa Smith, as well as the deputy CFO, and they are doing really the important work of meeting with our insurance underwriters. We do that every year. We do that annually as our underwriters start to go out to the market to find the best deal possible on the various insurances that as an as an operating entity, CATS needs to carry. So he apologizes for not being here today, but he is out doing that important work. I am going to do my best to walk you through the budget. As the chair said, this is a similar presentation, but not the same. Quite frankly, I wanted it to be more about outcomes because that's sort of in my role what I think about, but certainly to also give you an understanding of our budget in general, while also thinking about our budget priorities and the outcomes that we're striving for. As a new organization with PTAC, I know that some of you have prior experience with the former groups, but I want to, before we get into the presentation, sort of set the stage a little bit about where we're headed, but also where we've come from, because that is informative to the future, right? So 2 years ago, well, even before that, COVID was certainly very impactful to the entire transit industry across the country. It had a very pronounced impact on ridership and on revenues and on the ability of CATS and other transit agencies to continue providing their service. Thinking about coming out of COVID, and we are now, officially out of the COVID years, if you will. CATS also underwent a significant leadership change in the beginning of calendar year 2023 when Mr. Lewis left CATS, but as well as the CEO, Mr. Lewis, Ms. Sherman, the CFO, and Mr. Smith, the COO, left the organization within about a 60-day period. So new organizational team, new leadership. From that, we have built the executive team, many of whom are here today. And we've also started to focus on a few core areas. One is staffing. And staffing has been critical to us in that staffing directly impacts our ability to provide service. A few short years ago, we saw missed trips that were up in the 10 to 11% range. That's an extremely high missed trip rate. We are now happy to report that those missed trips are down into the less than 1% range routinely, so effectively zero. I will say last month was a little bit of an oddity. It was just over 2% for missed trips, but that was being driven. So last month we reported to the MTC about February. February missed trips were just a little bit over 2%. That was significantly driven by the weather event that we had in February. And that did drive our missed trip. It ticked up just a little bit, but we have also seen those missed trips starting to decline again. In fact, I will call out We Drive You and Transit Management of Charlotte. I just got an email this week reporting that one day last week, we had a total of 6 missed trips on a day. That is the lowest daily missed trips that we've had in a year, as National Express, as TMOC, as our operators have worked together to bring those missed trips into alignment with our expectation, which is really about zero, less than 1%. So I will say that has been a major driver for us moving through our operating budget. Vacancies, but really commitment to service, reliability, if you will. Another thing that we've seen is focus on safety and security. That's security and safety of our passengers, but also of our operators. It's a really tough job that our operators have. They don't get the thanks and appreciation that they always should from our riders. And so we do take it very seriously, and we have renewed our focus, or we continue our focus on safety and security, and you will see that in the budget. And then the last thing that drives a lot of this and will continue is what we call state of good repair. That's a bit of a federal term. What that means is just doing the maintenance that's required. And so that's everything from maintaining the fleet, the rail fleet, to maintaining the bus fleet, replacing the bus fleet, the buses when they hit the end of their useful life. So all of those things sort of fall under state of good repair, as well as facilities repair. So with that, why don't we jump right into the presentation? Brett, please. Okay, so just a reminder about our priorities. Our mission is moving people forward. We really look at our core values. All of these core values are important, but safety always is the first core value that we talk about. Employee-centric. How do we create an environment that's welcoming and inclusive and create a sense of belonging for all of our employees? How do we create training opportunities and career pathways for our employees, right? Coming to work for CATS or TMOC is not just a job. We view it as more of a first step in a lifetime career. Customer focused. Our customers are, they're why we're here, is to serve our customers. So always focusing on our customers and trying to meet their needs as best we can. Equity and inclusion. How are we equitable and inclusive in all of the things we do with our employees and with our customers? Innovation, sustainability, and then just simply operational excellence. Next slide. So what are some of our accomplishments? How did we live the vision over the last year? First of all, we are proud to have introduced STS Plus. STS is our paratransit service, and we were able to expand STS Plus into the entire jurisdiction of Mint Hill. We did that last year, and that has been very successful, and it certainly meets needs that were unmet previously in Mint Hill. As mentioned before, we launched North Mecklenburg Microtransit Service. That is our first launch in the county, and we sincerely hope it is not our last. With additional funding, there will be 19 zones all across the county for microtransit. The North Mecklenburg zone covers generally the North Charlotte area around North Lake Mall up through Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. I will state here, it does not cover all of Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson, but it does cover areas in those jurisdictions. I will agree it has been very successful. One, we think it meets a need that was unmet. It's first mile, last mile. And in typically suburban areas, that need is very tough. It's hard to serve suburban areas with traditional fixed route service. It's always the first mile, last mile that is the problem, right? That gets you. And microtransit helps to bridge that gap. We have had very good feedback so far on microtransit. We're also seeing new riders, which is exciting for us. These are folks that hadn't previously used transit and now are trying it out. We view that as a gateway into more transit use. Use microtransit, start to figure out how to use the app. And just like Kevin said, before long, we're all hopping on the 63X to come downtown to work. That's my bus too, as well. I live in Huntersville. And so it's very exciting, and we're excited about the positive responses. I will say the one complaint we have had about the service is that we should expand the zones, that we need to have more of that service. And I can relate to that. And we certainly want to do that and roll it out over the entire county. We also had 50 new buses come into service over the last year. We still have 24 that we've ordered over the last 2 years, but have not been delivered. So that will be a total refresh of 74 new buses. That is by far the largest infusion of new buses in the CAT system in many, many years. So we're really excited about that. We're glad that the 50 are here. We can't wait for the 24 to come in. We have a total fleet of 85 paratransit buses. We replaced 55 of those vehicles last year, and we are evaluating the best approach to replace the other roughly 30 vehicles. Again, as I mentioned, we have seen a huge reduction in missed trips. We've onboarded our new management contractor for transit management of Charlotte, National Express, or they've rebranded to We Drive You. We did that last year. They've been with us now for just about a year. The city, on behalf of CATS, purchased the Norfolk Southern O-line. I would be remiss without pausing here to say great work to the team. Ms. Goforth and our lawyers played a critical role in that. It was a lot of work. It was 25 years in the making. Norfolk Southern really didn't want to talk about it for 25 years. And then when they were ready to come to the table, they wanted to talk about it a lot and have it done in about a year. It was a huge lift. It was a very complicated property transaction, and the city closed on the O-line. So we appreciate the city having the vision and doing that, but we also appreciate all of the thousands of hours of CAT staff time that went into that project. Independence Busway reopened, huge improvement. It shaved 10 to 15 minutes off of those routes that use it. That may not sound like a lot, but that is a lot in the transit world when you can shave that much time just simply by reopening the busway. So it was a great partnership with NCDOT, and we were really excited that it was reopened last year. Our eServe Academy, that is our apprenticeship academy for bus and rail maintenance. That has been launched and is going through our training department. So we're very excited about that. Our bridge inspections, all of our aerial structures or bridges are inspected, and we have a plan in place for how we can ensure that they are properly inspected every 2 years per federal guidelines. And then last but certainly not least, we continue to work through needed upgrades and rehabilitation of our South Park Transit Center. Next slide. So what are our budget priorities thinking about the next fiscal year? Maintaining our current levels of service. So as we think about our revenues and expenses, we feel like we have a solid budget, a good budget, a balanced budget, but really at the current funding level, we have the ability today to continue maintaining what we have, but we do not have the capacity, financial capacity, to expand services beyond where we are. So the good news is maintaining what we have. The bad news is we do need additional revenues as we think about expansions to microtransit, enhancements to fixed route service, and certainly any of the new projects associated with our rapid transit corridors, Gold Line, Silver Line, Red Line, all of those different projects. Again, focus on safety and security. Our ridership, our riders, when we talk to them, you know, top 3 priorities for riders, and it doesn't change, is reliability, frequency, safety and security, amenities at the bus stops. And all of those go together. Amenities, lighting, the condition of the CTC all adds to the sense of safety. It allows us to better secure our passengers and our operators. So all of these things go together, but certainly safety and security is front of mind. Inside of safety and security, it certainly is an issue that we will focus on over the next year, is fare evasion. So people who use our services but don't pay. We know that there is some amount of fare evasion on the rail, and we know that. We also, though, there is fare evasion on buses as well, and so it is not simply a rail issue. There is fare evasion that occurs on buses. Our goal is to develop strategies with our security contractor for doing more fare inspection to cut down on that fare evasion. So that's sort of just the good old boots on the ground, people checking tickets throughout the system, whether it's on the buses, it's at the bus stops, it's at the train platforms, on the trains, it's all of those things. And it's just good old fashioned, folks who are out there checking tickets. We're also looking at technology solutions for fare evasion, and there are some out there, and we're evaluating those, and we'll continue evaluating those. Those are a little bit longer lead items. They take some construction work. And so the first strategy is really the bread and butter of it, which is fare inspections or people coming through and checking tickets. So that will be a focus for us with our security contractor. We feel really good about our security contractor. Over the last about 18 months, we were going through changes with our security contractor. We now have a single security contractor. It's PSS. They are a local company, small business, owned by two former CMPD officers. We feel very, very good about our relationship and partnership with them. And we feel very good about their knowledge of Charlotte, their knowledge of the system, and their understanding of how the right way to create security throughout the system really is. And so we're happy about that, and we look forward to focusing on security throughout the system, including fare evasion. Yes, sir.
Quick question. What metrics are you using how do you determine, what metrics are you using to measure improvements in security and safety?
Yeah, so when we think about safety and security, when it comes to fare evasion, we'll be monitoring, has fare evasion decreased? Which is pretty simple, right? That is a little trickier on the train, but it is pretty straightforward for buses. And then secondly, we look at incidents, the number of incidents that occur throughout the system, and how can we work to lower those incidences or to lower the severity of those incidences. And so one of those would be assaults on operators. So one of the metrics that we report on monthly to the MTC is just that, it's assaults on operators. Now, the metric the goal that we have is zero, right? There's no amount of assaults on an operator that's acceptable. So our goal is zero, but we will watch that to watch as that number reduces or how it fluctuates. The other thing, and this is sort of in the weeds that we look at from a security standpoint, is we don't just blindly send out officers and say, go out and pick a bus, any bus, ride a bus. We look at the data. Where are the routes that have a higher number of incidences? And then we're very strategic, working with PSS to send out officers to address those specific routes. And we do have those routes, right? That certainly have higher incidences than other routes. And so it's not sort of trying to have a blanket approach, because the reality is, just like CMPD can't be everywhere in the city all the time, our security folks can't be everywhere in the system all the time. So it's really using data to drive how we create better outcomes and then looking at those outcomes. Yes, ma'am.
So, Nichelle Dunlap Thompson, Mecklenburg County, thank you so much for this information. I just want to, thank you. I want to just challenge the board here, the committee, for a moment. I know that it's not CAT's job, right, to assess personal situations, but we are all aware of the financial burdens that is coming down because of job loss, okay? So I want us to be very intentional when we're doing these checks for this fare evasion. I'm not expecting you all to allow people to ride for free, because we're in the business of making money. However, I would ask you all to take into consideration that there may be some underlying factors that may not already be, may not always be connected to a criminal agenda. And so saying that, I want us to learn how we can implement not just strategies, right, to continue to have the company to make money, but strategies that will give the residents, the riders, solutions so that they're not placed into another disadvantaged situation because they're just trying to get to work.
Yeah. So a couple things on that. One is, as we go through and check tickets, the goal here, just check for not like writing a ticket, but have people bought a ticket to ride. The goal here of security is not to find folks who haven't paid and write them tickets, right? The goal is to educate and to assist, right? And that may be letting someone go on about their business, but also talking to them about the importance of paying in the future. The other thing, to your point about fare and need, right, and equity, accessibility, really comes in our fare study. So right now our fares are complicated. There's a lot of different fares, but the other truth about our fares is there are discounted fares, but those fare discounts are focused on age, young riders or older riders. As we have done the fare study, one of the priorities is to think about equity and to think about ability to pay. And so we do anticipate recommending to the PTAC and to the MTC, as we start to have recommendations with the fare study, is thinking about bringing equity into our fares and having discounts based on ability to pay or need. And so that is very, very important. And that is something that our current fare structure, while it does offer discounts, it really isn't based on need or ability. And so we do view that as a very important change that needs to be made. Yep. Yes, sir.
How does fare system malfunction compared to fare evasion? I know you probably see it on 63X. It seems to be a lot less than before, but it used to be maybe 20% of trips that I would take.
Yeah.
I would not be paying because the machine was malfunctioning.
Yeah, so that does happen. I would say over the last couple years, a focus on maintenance has also significantly reduced that. It has not reduced it to zero because, quite frankly, if a bus and their fare system isn't working, you sort of have two choices. Don't send out a bus and have a missed trip, or send out a bus and just say, look, it's everybody's lucky day, right? Today is free day on this bus. And so we are focused on that. It happens much less, but it does happen. And when it happens, yes, that's right. Now, I will say, because our system is so dependent, is very heavily dependent on online using the app, there are still a significant number of folks who will buy a ticket even if the fare box per se is not working. They still have done that, but it does happen. And, you know, we do choose to send the bus out rather than not send a bus. But we can get you more information on that. And you are correct. There was a time a couple years ago where it was much more common to have vehicles go out with a broken or a malfunctioning fare box. But that has been greatly reduced.
Do those numbers end up getting in the same bucket as the fare evasion or two separate buckets?
We don't count them as fare evasion. What really happens is they start to be sort of, it's just an uncounted, right? So it just doesn't come into the dollars. We don't count passengers based on fare box though. So that is one way to count it, but usually when we're reporting passengers, it's based on the automatic eye that everyone walks through when they board a bus, the passenger counter. And so we still get an accurate count of the passengers, even if there was no fare collected. I'll also going back one more thing and time, and I know we need to, in the interest of time, keep moving on this. I will also say, when it comes to operator safety, there are certain things that we do that do create maybe a higher occurrence of fare evasion. And what do I mean by that? So a couple years ago, operators, we talked to the operators, and a lot of concerns, still are concerns, and we're still talking to them, but one of the things that we realized is our standard operating procedures can really create situations that lead to confrontations between passengers and operators. And so we make it clear to the operators, we do not expect them, we do not want them. It is not their job to enforce fares. It's their job to operate the bus safely, get people where they want to go, where they need to go. And so we've made it clear, if someone doesn't pay, we keep rolling, the bus keeps going. The other thing I will say is it was standard operating procedure for the operators to state the fare to every passenger who boarded the bus. We have stopped doing that because even though it was just stating the fare, it could be viewed as confrontational if someone was boarding and they did not have the fare. So our operators now, if a passenger asks, how much does it cost to ride the bus? They'll absolutely tell you, but they don't just offer that up unsolicited. And that has really helped to take them out of that possible conflict that occurs at the fare box many times.
One quick question. I know you want to move on, but regarding the fare aversion that's tied to social hardship, does CATS have relationships or plan to build relationships with social service organizations?
We absolutely do. I'll let Ms. Prezzuti answer that because she has been doing great work with our partnerships.
Yeah, we do have relationships with several health and human service agencies. Some of our biggest past buyers are Mecklenburg County and some of our other health and human service agencies. But we've also been working with them to also establish our All Access Pass program. And that is a program where an organization pays a set amount of money based on their total employee or employee count or people who participate in their programs count. And then they have a set amount they pay based on that. And then everybody in their organization can ride for free. So we recently established that program with the Relatives, which is an organization in our community that works with the youth population. We've also established it with an apartment complex that has no parking available at their location, and looking to work with a couple of other nonprofit human service agencies in establishing that with our unhoused community and some of their program participants. So it is something that we're actively working on. Also looking at different fare programs for those that may not work directly with a health and human service agency, but receive benefits in some way, shape, or form. So if they receive childcare benefits, housing credits, or food assistance, that they would be eligible for a reduced fare as well. And so just trying to reduce the burden and the number of spots somebody has to go to get transportation, and try and cut out some of the paperwork associated with that as well.
Okay, so due to the time and the amount of content that we still have yet to get through, I know we've got Ms. Kelly go forth still, and I think we're only 2 pages in. We've got to get back on.
I promise you that the first 2 were where we were going to spend time. I'll pick it up a little.
Yeah, I appreciate.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yeah. Last two things on this slide. I'll just state them. CTC, it is absolutely past time for us to reinvest in the CTC. We will be in the next 60 days talking to the MTC, to PTAC, and to the City Council on our game plan for how we make necessary improvements at the CTC. And we will see those improvements rolling out quickly. All right, technology investment. We have a lot of technology systems that are at end of life. We also have a lot of new technology systems that are out there and available that we do not have, but we need. So we will be really focused on our technology needs so that we have better data, easier to use that data, better business intelligence as we run the business, so to speak. All right, next slide. All right, system ridership. You can see the COVID years were not kind to transit, bottomed out at 8.7 million riders. We have been steadily recovering. We are projecting about 16.7 million riders next year. In the next fiscal year, we are on track, generally speaking, with the rest of the nation for kind of COVID recovery. When we first started recovering, we were a little bit slower to recover, but we're making up ground on the rest of the country, and we're excited about that. We see all of our modes every month increasing in ridership, and that is great news for us. All right, next slide. So just our summary. Our total operating budget is $289 million. Our total capital budget is $57 million. Now that is the new ask. The $57 million does not include monies that have been previously approved and committed or encumbered on projects and contracts from previous years. So that is just the new money ask for the capital budget for the next 5 years. And then obviously, Mr. Howell would be very mad at me if I didn't point out again that this is a structurally balanced operating budget. All right, next slide. All right, priorities. We talked about the priorities. Organizational resilience, building and maintaining a robust and adaptable transit organization. So really the items, when we think about our budget and how do we decide, right? There's always going to be more things to do than we have capacity, financial capacity for. So we go back to those strategic priorities, right? We look at how does this fit in with our strategic priorities. So first is organizational resilience. Funding for CTC improvements fall into this category. Again, facility maintenance, that falls on both the operating and capital side. Those are both our internal facilities for our operators, our break rooms, the main bus facility, the North Davidson facility, as well as customer-facing facilities, park and ride facilities, transit centers, some of the other transit centers, South Park, Rosa Parks, Eastland. New vehicles, and then, of course, rail car maintenance. So really investments in maintaining and purchasing new when needed, our rolling stock. So really focusing on all of our facilities that state of good repair. Next slide. Employee success, again, supporting our employees, recruitment and retention. So when I started, I mentioned that we had very high vacancies about 2 years ago. I think our vacancies were running in the 25% range. Today, they run in the 10% range. I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of the team. It takes a lot of active effort to maintain a vacancy rate that low. And so we are proud of that. And our focus will continue to be on maintaining that low vacancy rate, while also, once you're hired, creating pathways for professional development for our employees. And then lastly, thinking about training programs and apprenticeships, so that for those folks who want to come into the organization, this is an alternate way for them to come into the organization via a training program or apprenticeship, and be able to start their career and then build their way up throughout their career. Next slide. Future forward planning. So this is really where our technology upgrades and enhancements live. Thinking about fare collection, our enterprise asset materials maintenance system, scheduling software, and computer-aided dispatch software. So fare collection, how does that, what is that about with technology? So that's really looking at the fare box and how we implement new technologies to allow alternate forms of payment, tap to pay, fare cards, those kinds of things. So thinking about the technology in that way. The enterprise asset materials maintenance system is really, it's a mission critical system, and it affects everything that we do. And it is a major effort for CATS over the next 12 to 18 months. That will really put us in a much better position to have that operational data on how we run the business and the decisions we make going forward. It's not that we don't have those systems. We do. They're old. They're at end of life. And the key to what I just said is systems, plural. So we have many different systems that don't talk to each other. And so you have to sort of piece together data across many different systems, and it becomes very difficult. It's much more efficient to have an enterprise system that captures all of that data and gives you the full picture in a much easier way. So it is a major undertaking and effort for our technology folks and for Elizabeth's portfolio, but that will be a focus for them over the next 12 to 18 months. All right, next slide. Exceptional customer service. Safety and security, top priority. The fare policy, as we talked about. A runtime analysis. So let me explain that a little bit. I mentioned we were really proud that we brought down our missed trips. So the next thing, right? So if you have high missed trips, you're inevitably, your on-time performance suffers too. And so as we saw for missed trips, the next metric that's really, really important in transit is, are the vehicles running on time, right? So we call that OTP, on-time performance. And what we see, industry standard, sort of the benchmark would be 85% OTP or better in our bus, in our fixed route bus. Rail is much higher than that, but it's because it's rail. And so 85% or better in fixed route bus. Right now, we hover around the 80% mark. Sometimes a little bit better than that, 82%, sometimes a little bit lower than that. And when we say on time, we truly mean on time, right? On time is on time. It's not early and it's not late. And so when we think about that, there are different strategies for early arrivals and late arrivals. And we're working through that because we do have some OTP issues that are associated with early arrivals. It's usually about 3 to 5% of trips. And then the rest is late. And so we're looking at how we can work better with TMOC and the operators to do that. But this is not simply an operator issue. So a runtime analysis is needed because over time, those routes that we have, it may be impossible to maintain on-time performance because the route was set 10 years ago and now the south end has constant construction and more traffic, or, you know, Central Avenue. And so if you're not conducting a runtime analysis, what happens is you make it almost impossible for certain routes to be run on time. That's not fair to the operator. It's not fair to the customers. And so we're doing a runtime analysis. We hadn't done one in about 10 years, maybe longer, according to Mr. Lawrence. That needs to be done at least every 5 years. And in a growing community, maybe more often. So it's overdue, and we're doing that now, and that will help inform how do we create better results with OTP, because that's very, very important. All right, next slide. Positive community impact. All right. So again, Ms. Prizzuti talked about this a little bit. How do we create new partnerships to benefit our riders, to benefit our operators, to benefit transit in general? Looking at enhancing the Transportation Demand Management Program, or TDM. We talked about the grant that we're seeking. So all of those go into positive community impact. How do we continue to build positive relationships and perceptions of our service in the community? Next slide. Revenue considerations. So as we think about our revenues, there are two things that are our safeguards. One is under policy, we need to maintain $100 million unrestricted fund balance. Think about that as your rainy day fund. And so that could be used if something happens that would change our revenue projections overnight. That gives you the rainy day fund so that you have time to respond to things like a global pandemic and ridership goes down literally in the span of 6 months or something like that. That's the rainy day fund. And then the second is our revenue reserve fund. This is our legal requirement when we issue bonds. The folks who buy those bonds, we make a commitment to them that we will maintain a $30 million revenue reserve fund. That is about 2 times max annual debt service, or MADS. And that is there so that if that catastrophic event happens, the bondholders know that we still have financial capacity to keep paying off the debt that we have. The sales tax. Sales tax, Article 43 sales taxes are our primary revenue source, local revenue source, and we are projecting approximately a 4% growth rate in sales taxes for next year. We work with the city's economist. His name's Indem, and he gives us a lot of insight to the extent anyone can have insight in the state of the economy these days. He helps us sort of look into that crystal ball and do our best. And so we're using a 4% annual growth rate for sales tax. Grants. We aim to maximize the use of our federal formula grants. Every year we receive those. They are just exactly what they sound like. We get those based on ridership, revenue miles, those kinds of things. So they're formulaic and they come to CATS. And we want to maximize the use of those each year. And then we're always on the lookout for new grant opportunities or competitive grants, so that as we can compete for those new grants, we're in a position to know what they are and be ready to put in applications to compete for those grants. Fares are important. They are not a large part of our revenue picture, but certainly we couldn't afford to provide the same service we provide today without them. So we are projecting that revenues from fares will increase, but that is solely based on increasing ridership. We are not recommending an increase to the fare this year. It is fare revenue growth is based on more people riding, not the same number of people paying more per trip, if that makes sense. Again, when it comes to fare increases, we want the fare study to be complete. We want to make recommendations. And we know that we have not raised fares in about a decade. That is too long to go between raising fares. We do need that, but we want to be informed by the fare study before we do that. And then we think the best policy would be to get into the habit of routine small fare increases at a 2-year or 3-year pace, but just basically make it part of the routine and built into the budget. And honestly, pre-COVID, that was the norm. Every 2 years, we always planned on a small fare increase. But during COVID and need and those kinds of things, it went away. I guess it was actually a little before COVID.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
For the sake of us being able to cover all the content here,
Yes.
Can we just use a little bit of brevity and make sure that we're, trying to cover the slides the best we can, but we don't need to go
I'll
too
keep
far.
it
Yeah.
moving.
Thank you.
And then the partnerships, again, seeing new revenues. All right, operating and capital challenge. Again, we've talked a lot about these. So maintaining the current service levels, understanding that we do have increased costs, both on the capital and operating side, and knowing that there was a pot of money that we received for COVID during the COVID, we call it COVID funds, that are now going to be fully exhausted, and they will not be replaced. And so again, looking at all of these things, they would be the things that we've already talked about and the challenges that we face as we move forward. Next slide. Operating budget, 2 different ways. One of them is by fund or source of funds. And then the second is on the revenue side, shows you the source of funds. And then on the expense side, shows you how we spend that money. Our single largest expense area is in personal services or pay for our operators, for our staff. Next slide. Okay, our Article 43 sales tax. Again, this is the 4% increase that we're projecting, going from 158.9 million to 167.3 million in FY26. Next slide. Capital budget, again, showing it as the revenues and expenses. The capital budget does have significant federal contributions, and you can see that here. PAYGO, and it also has state contributions from grants. PAYGO, whether it's repurposed or new, is basically local dollars. That's pay-as-you-go dollars. So that's cash, local cash. Capital expenses, it should come as no surprise. Rail is factoring is a significant factor in that. Vehicles also factor into that. Bus operations, technology, development, facilities, safety and security as well on the capital side. The BOD or the non-revenue vehicles, as I mentioned before, we do have a very large order of buses in. So next year does represent a relatively small budget for replacement. Are we out of time? No. I was like, wow. So it is smaller than normal, but that's to allow the 70 buses to come in so that we don't have an overly large amount of vehicles that all need to be replaced at the same time in 12 years. So that's not because we have a waning commitment. It's trying to get smarter about buying those vehicles to create a more even replacement cycle next time around, rather than have a big lump of replacements all at once. We couldn't avoid it with the 72, but we want to smooth that out as we can. Next slide. Budget adoption schedule. So here we are at PTAC on the 9th. Next will be the 30th, the next MTC adoption, or next MTC meeting. We will ask the MTC for adoption. And then the budget will cross over to city council, where it will be included in the city manager's proposed budget, ultimately with budget adoption on June 9th. With that, that is all of my content, unless there are questions.
Yeah, I think the remainder of our time today, we will be pushing the TSP into the next agenda. Yeah. And we can open it up for discussions to look at the budget further.
So is there a vote out of this organization on sections of what we propose here, or what's next step for us?
So this is. That is an excellent question. This is an informational item. And obviously at the next MTC meeting, the chair will present out the presentation and any comments or thoughts from the MTC, but it is not required for the PTAC to take a formal vote on this.
I don't see the same presentation, which is not the traditional accounting spreadsheets.
They have already provided we have given them a presentation. We'll do a brief follow-up with them. And then again, the vote. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so are there any questions for Brent in this presentation? Comments, concerns?
Do you want to, would it be a good reminder on the process of council approval of the budget?
Sure, I'll go through that really quickly. So because we are a city department, that means, but we are a regional provider. We ask the MTC to approve the budget, but legally under state statute, as a part of the city of Charlotte, it must be ultimately adopted or approved as part of the city manager's budget. That is very weird, very unique to CATS. But that's why we do this process. It's sort of a twofold process for us. But because we are a city department under state statute, the city council must ultimately adopt the entire city budget, to which CATS budget is part.
Okay.
Yes, my question was going to be in regards to tickets. I know you said you'll do your best to try to avoid it, but what bucket does that fall in if there has to be, some increase in tickets due to fare evasion security measures actually, kind of going through?
Yeah, so
Can I just say something really quick? I believe fares are only 6% of the overall operating budget. So I just want people to have a little bit of perspective that when we're talking about these fares, where they sit in the greater scheme of things.
Correct. They are very low, or as a percentage. They're not low as far as dollars. They're very, very important as far as dollars, but they are very low as a percentage. So if we do need to write citations, they are very small citations, and they will account for a tiny, tiny fraction. What I would say is we try to avoid that, and what we really do is focus on education and changing behavior, because the tickets, it's not about writing tickets, it's about changing behavior. Yeah.
So I just wanted to circle back to the runtime analysis that you all are going to take place. Is there a metrics of some sort that is already in existence that will determine which routes will undergo those analysis first? Because of course, my concern is the 63X undergoing a runtime analysis, but the 10 West Boulevard is left out of that conversation.
Yeah, all routes are being evaluated.
Okay, do you have a system as far as which ones would be first and the time span, the calendar of that?
They're all being evaluated together,
Okay.
right? There's no sort of order on that. So we've already contracted, the work has already started, and there is analysis going on all routes.
All routes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's right.
Lisa, I'll go after you because I think you had your hand up. Two things. Do you all have in your budget, I know we've got social media here and we got Tanya here as a former press person, but you all have such a great story to tell. I mean, that 15-minute headway thing on Independence, and you're in a room full of transit geeks. I feel like we should know that, right? And the public should know that. You know, Delta and Southwest, they spend so much money advertising their on-time performance, et cetera. Y'all have an amazing story to tell.
I agree.
And you know, 2 years ago, y'all were getting your heads handed to you. And the story is, so, and I understand, you know, kind of keep trying to be under the radar, but at this point, I mean, it's an amazing story to tell. So, you know, is there a plan to proactively do that? Unrelated thing, we've got, is it 4 or 5 microtransit systems now in the region operating, and probably more coming, all of them interfacing with CATS at some point now or in the future. So the sort of fare integration piece is going to become super, super critical. Like, I know you all know this, but like, is that on the radar?
Yeah. Well, first I'll answer the marketing piece. Yes, we know we have a great story and we need to do a better job at telling it. And we have, are working on a campaign that will start to launch in the next couple of months to better amplify that as we work through the summer and fall. On the fare piece, we have that on our roadmap. We know as we think about being a bigger region and creating connectivity within the region, fare is the number one barrier to making this all work better. And so as we think about fare technology enhancements and we think about our mobile app, thinking about how we work with our partners in a better way, we actually have a grant through this state to see how we can better work with Rider Transit in Cabarrus County in Concord to integrate into our CATS Pass app. So we're trying to make some headway in that regard. As we get a little bit closer down the road to finalizing the updates to our fare policy, we do intend to reach out to our other transit systems in the area and figure out is there a better way to kind of connect and think about technology as a whole. So.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, but the one that I want to focus on is the microtransit. What's the roadmap for the microtransit? How do we use, again, I know this from other places. Davidson's very different from the Beatties Ford corridor, or suburbs very different from city, urban core. Will we be able to leverage anything from Davidson for the other parts? And what's the priority in terms of that roadmap? What's the priority in rolling out the microtransit plan?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. Yes, absolutely. There are differences, regional differences. Hidden Valley is totally different than Huntersville. But there are things we can learn in Huntersville that apply to microtransit across all zones. I point to Hidden Valley because that is one of the zone areas as we roll it out. And so we know that there are regional differences, but what is the same is, being able to connect folks and get them connected into other modes or connected into activity centers like the doctor or the grocery store that are within a close proximity to their homes, to their residences. So I think we'll learn sort of what works, what doesn't. The other thing that we'll get a gauge on is demand. And so when you think about microtransit, you know, you're sort of, it's a blessing and a curse. As you get more demand, the time that you have to wait to get picked up goes up unless you add vehicles. And so we'll get a better gauge of sort of demand and how to manage demand. And then the last thing we'll learn is sort of what is manageable from the size of the zone standpoint, because that all matters when you're thinking about how to create a good experience. So all of those are important, and we'll learn as we go with those, with the current pilot or rollout. For the other zones, we haven't defined the exact rollout, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 19. We need to do that. What I would say is we know no one wants to be last on that list. Everyone wants to be as close to the top as possible. And so what we're really focusing on is, if given the opportunity through new funding, how do we shorten the rollout for all zones, create the fastest rollout we can for all of those zones, so it's not, so that there's not sort of the feeling that, gosh, this is great, now it's funded, but I'm number 19 on the list, and that's going to be, 4 years from now. The goal on Better Bus, which includes microtransit, is to really, if we get that funding, to roll out the Better Bus programs literally as close to day one as we can. We want, if people vote yes, we want to show them where their money's going from the very beginning. And so what we're doing now is looking at what is the rollout plan and how do we compress that, knowing that all of the zones will want to be served as fast as possible. So we don't have an answer yet, but we're working on it.
Let's have a question. Speaking of the comparison between, say, Davidson and Hidden Valley, like, from what I understand, Davidson was kind of geared toward the way the Village Rider routes are going. So how will we all determine for, like, Hidden Valley or Village Ford Road, how will you determine sort of the route patterns for that for microtransit?
Yeah, so we're looking at that now. Again, it's twofold. So actually, Hidden Valley, Davidson, you are absolutely right. The Village Rider, that's what we call sort of the transit nerd speak, is the neighborhood circulator. Hidden Valley has a neighborhood circulator as well. And so we would look to mirror that geography. Now, the other side to that is we'll have public engagement as we roll out, just like we did for the first zone. We'll do extensive public engagement. And if we miss something, the community comes out and says, hey, wait a minute, you missed something that's really important here. We have the flexibility to make those changes. We did that on the first zone, quite frankly. And we'll do that with all of the zones, because it's that community feedback that helps us to be better, to best serve their needs. And so that will also be part of the process as we roll out the zones, is asking the community, how do we do on this? Is the vision right, or did we miss something?
Nobody wants to go, I'll go. We're down 5 million riders. Where'd they go?
Yeah, I think, so this probably isn't the full answer, but here's at least a major part of the answer. They're still riding. They just don't work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in the office anymore. That's right. That's exactly right. And so Wednesday, right, if we are looking at ridership by day, Wednesday, probably there's no decline from pre-COVID. Monday and Friday is very, very different. Those are not the same. The other thing we think, yes, is exactly right. The other thing we think is on express routes, hybrid work, even if you're coming into the office every day, you may be leaving at noon or those kinds of things. And right now, that is a miss with our express routes, in that we don't have the financial capacity to run midday routes. we know that there's demand for that. And with additional funding, we could pick up those riders, and instead of losing them to a car, we get them back on with those midday runs.
And Harold, jumping on the losing them to a car, in my social circles, what the feedback that I'm getting is why you're not riding the bus is they believe that the bus is not timely. You know, if we don't have consistency of service, then why should I get on the bus? The old bus.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the whole marketing thing. Cats, we're better than we used to be.
Right.
That might be the slogan.
Right. Agreed. Yep.
Part of the answer is that UNCC study that Elizabeth Delvell did about light rail, and the region is sprawled more and more dramatically. And some of the transit riders are just, they're not in transit sheds anymore, right?
Right. Yeah. We do see, so that's sort of the bad news. Now, the good news is we also see areas of high ridership that weren't before. Special events, we see massive increases in transit ridership and potential to continue that through partnerships or just through providing additional services around special events. You know, I think the biggest Wednesday or Tuesday we had maybe last year was the night Beyonce was in town. It was a huge night for us. And so there is some potential there with new ridership. But some of those riders, they just simply, they're not riding because they're staying at home some of the week.
But I assume are you seeing the special event riders primarily on links though? On the phone?
Well, on links, but, and Elizabeth gets all the credit for this. She worked very closely with Love and Life last year to work on not only special event for the Blue Line, but also to add in express buses that would serve Love and Life. And again, nothing but positive feedback on that. And so, yes, the Blue Line booms for special events uptown, but there's also the ability for us to bring in special event bus express routes to a much greater degree that will serve markets that the Blue Line just can't, you know.
So like if we get CIAA back, we could theoretically do special event buses for it.
That's absolutely right.
And the Panther buses that ran in the 90s.
And this year, in just a few weeks, Charlotte's hosting the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow, and so we are working with them. Any goer of the championship can ride CAT services for free. So we have a fair partnership with them, and then we're also the Blue Line runs to Sharon Road West, and we happen to have a regular bus route that goes between Sharon Road West and Quail Hollow. So we'll be improving the frequency with 30 buses in max capacity between Sharon Road West and Quail Hollow, and really trying to capture ridership to that event because it is parking constrained and traffic constrained in that area. And the PGA is super excited to be able to showcase CATs as a premier way to get to the tournament. So
to be clear, to the event goer, it's free. It is not free. It's a partnership with the PGA, so there is payment for that. But as an event goer, when you buy your ticket, it's sort of wrapped in as part of the price. But it is not just a free ride.
yes, they're paying for all the fares.
Yeah, so that's right. So, but yeah, I think there are a lot of those kinds of opportunities, even on the bus side, that again, having the financial capacity to do that, we would be able to better serve the entire region.
Okay, there are no more questions and we have no more business, and I go motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any nays? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. The next meeting will be Wednesday, May 13th at 4 p.m. in the Charlotte Mecklenburg Government Center, room 280. You're gonna leave them. And we're gonna go to the next meeting.